The moment you shift how you think about yourself and your circumstances, both you and those circumstances will begin to change. Hello, this is Dane Spots. I'm sure you've heard the idea that our thoughts somehow shape the reality we experience, that negative thoughts influence the world around us and bring about negative circumstances, while positive thoughts somehow bring about positive circumstances. Well, an entire industry of motivational speakers has been created around this premise. Almost all of us have been exposed to the tenets of positive thinking. But if it works so well, then why isn't everyone who attends these seminars and reads these books rich and successful? And most of all, happy? If all we need to do is to think positive thoughts, we should be able to create a positive world almost overnight, shouldn't we? What's wrong with this picture? Well, I've spent the last 20 years trying to find out. And what I've discovered is a philosophy that I'll share with you along with a set of tools and programs I think will not only be a tremendous benefit, but will literally allow you to become your potential and derive the maximum pleasure out of life. Much of what I'm about to share with you will seem simple in concept. The best ideas usually are. And so I should warn you that there's a tendency to view these simple ideas from a surface level without really internalizing and practicing them. Therefore, I recommend that you listen to this tape a minimum of 4 times. 10 times would be even better. And each time you hear these ideas, rather than using your rational, intellectual mind, which analyzes things to death, use your playful, risk-taking side and make the effort to incorporate these tools into your daily life. The reason I'm asking this of you is because I know that most of you will listen to this tape once and then stick it on a shelf, and you'll never really use the material. I want you to use this stuff, to practice it and internalize it. You see, it takes a commitment, a conscious commitment, to make positive change occur on a subconscious level. The tools and reprogramming processes must be used to make them work. Look, here's something I want you to realize right now. The old you will do everything in its power to prevent change. It will come up with excuses for not listening to the tapes. It will procrastinate and make excuses for not using these ideas and programs, even if they're good for you. And the reason why you'll do that to yourself is because the old you is comfortable. It has a built-in survival mechanism to protect the status quo. And that's why change is so difficult. And it's also why positive thinking on a surface level always fails. Millions and millions of people attend positive thinking seminars or buy books and tapes each year, yet very few derive lasting benefits from them. If you've ever attended any of these seminars or read any of these books, you're usually high from the motivational uplift for about 2 days. Then you go back to your old self again. Listen, it isn't that the material isn't valid or doesn't work. It does. It's just that the positive thinking and motivational stories deal only with your conscious mind. And that conscious mind is not the engine that powers your life. Rather, it's the subconscious or the unconscious portions of your mind from which your behavior and attitudes spring. Going directly into the unconscious and rewiring how you think about yourself and your future is the key to permanent and lasting change. And that's precisely what we'll be addressing in this program. Okay, let's begin. First off, let me give you the philosophy behind this program and also answer the question of just how our thinking and beliefs on a subconscious level affects our wealth, our health, and our success or failure in any undertaking. Let me read you something that sums up rather nicely the point of all of this. What we believe determines what we make true. Let me read that again to you. What we believe determines what we make true. Our perceptions of reality, how we think about ourselves and the world around us, what we look for and what we take to be true is determined by our beliefs. Alter a belief and you can change reality, or at least the reality that you experience. What I'm saying is that through your beliefs, you form your reality. A friend of mine who's a very successful and very wealthy real estate entrepreneur started without a single dime in his pocket, and he was able to amass a great fortune in only a few years with a simple philosophy of faking it until he made it. He convinced himself on a subconscious level that he had already acquired a great fortune, when in fact he was really broke. In his mind, he became a millionaire. The circumstances that brought about that reality then followed. Now, I'm sure that you've heard similar stories. What we take to be true on a subconscious level becomes our reality. Now, does that mean that skill and luck don't play a role in wealth and prosperity? Well, money-making skills are learned and begin with a desire and a belief that it's possible. Remember, what we believe is based on our perceptions, and what we perceive depends upon what we look for. And what we look for depends upon what we think. And luck, and we all know of those people who seem to be exceptionally lucky, is created out of a core belief that good things should happen. It's an expectation. Expect to be lucky, and you will be. It's as simple as that. Now, you've probably seen this happen to you all the time, but in reverse. You know, when you tell yourself that you're having a bad day, and sure enough, you do. What we believe determines what we make true. And that's the entire premise of this idea, as well as the tape. Are you still with me? What I'm telling you here is nothing new. In fact, it's very old. Philosophers and great thinkers have been saying it for thousands of years. The Roman philosopher Marcus Aurelius said, "Our light is what our thoughts make of it." Napoleon Hill said exactly the same thing in Think and Grow Rich. And everyone since has said the same basic idea. But that doesn't necessarily help you make it work better in your life. You see, you've got to break through an encrusted mind script that's made up of years of negative programming. That's why we've created mind development tools here at Zygon, because the purpose of these tools is to deal with the issue of beliefs and behavior at the deepest levels of your being, and to anchor these new beliefs into your subconscious, where your beliefs are formed and reinforced by your perceptions and thus made true. To create lasting change, you must rescript the core set of beliefs that forms how you think and perceive your reality. Inside our subconscious minds, we have scripted what we see as the truth. Remember, what we accept to believe as true is true or becomes true, period. And any evidence contrary to our core beliefs is discarded or perceptually modified by our brains. So if you've been told all your life that you'll never amount to anything, or believe that being wealthy is something beyond your grasp, then that is the mind script that is welded into your subconscious. And then that's the reality you will experience. Now, enough talk about that. Let me give you now a very simple and very powerful tool that you can use to create the reality that you'd like to experience, to attract wealth and prosperity, to bring forth loving and positive relationships, to make you shine and glow and achieve in every area of your life. It's a process I call visioneering. What is it? Well, it's a program of mental rehearsal of future events that anchors successful images to positive emotions through a simple visualization technique. It also programs the subconscious to bring forth a desired goal into reality. Now, you're probably familiar with visualization techniques, and perhaps you've experimented with them in your life. That's good. Most people try it for a while, but then they give up, usually for two reasons. The first is that the old you creeps in again with excuses for not changing. And also because you may not have been doing it right, so you never really noticed any positive feedback to justify continuing doing it. Well, I'm going to give you a super simple solution that's going to work incredibly well, but it's up to you to use it. And there are 3 steps in the process. Before I give them to you, let me give you a bit of a tip. You must set up a regular time each and every day for your visioneering session. We're talking about 5 minutes a day. 5 minutes, and you can achieve any worthwhile goal that you desire. Morning or night, it doesn't really matter. Just give yourself the 5 minutes. You're worth it. Now, this 5 minutes must be exclusively devoted to the visioneering process. Okay, are you ready for a session? Get into a comfortable position, close your eyes, and with your eyes closed, roll them upwards slightly, as if you're trying to see the center of your forehead. and listen to yourself breathe. Focus your attention on slowly taking deep breaths and on the sound of the air coming in and out of your lungs. Feel yourself relax. Do this breathing exercise 5 times. It will only take 45 seconds or so as you focus on your breathing. This is a simple relaxation exercise that will immediately alter your consciousness, putting your brain into an alpha state. In fact, if you were to hook yourself up to an EEG machine while doing this simple procedure, you would see an increase in alpha wave production emitting from your brain. And in only 45 seconds. You know, there are seminars that charge upwards of $500 to teach you this. Okay, so you've learned how to induce an alpha brainwave state in 45 seconds. The next step is to pick out an image of a past memory where you were extremely happy. Really get in touch with that experience. It doesn't really matter what it is or when it happened. The point is to conjure up a winning feeling or a positive emotion that you can then use to connect with your image of a future event. Perhaps this is an image of the moment you remember falling in love, or receiving a standing ovation during a high school play. Go back into your past and pull out a very specific event that you will relive in every detail. Feel the pats on your back, the loving adulation. Remember the voices, the smells, the colors. As you recreate this scene, let yourself re-experience all of those winning feelings. What you're doing here is bringing forward into your consciousness a positive emotion that will psychologically become connected with a future goal in your subconscious. This has the effect of anchoring that desired goal into the subconscious mind so that it's energized and becomes a subconscious reality. Now, making it happen is really quite easy, because if the subconscious mind believes it, it will alter your perceptions and will look for it to make it into a reality. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. Okay, once you've relived that positive moment and felt those winning feelings welling up inside of you, the next step is to envision the future goal that you want to achieve as vividly as possible. It can be through a mental picture, a word, a musical note, a taste. In fact, any sensory image that you can think of. Each person is different. Some people respond better to pictures, while others words. The key point here is to see yourself as if you've already achieved that goal, whether it's in the form of a picture, a feeling, or words. If it's money, see yourself as already having it. Perhaps the images are of you going to the bank with a big deposit, or you're sitting at your desk at work piled high with $100 bills. Smell the money, roll in it, throw it in the air. See yourself walking down the street wearing the finest clothes, driving your dream car, and hearing the whispers and comments of your friends, wondering how you ever got so successful. If you're a student taking a test, see that big red A+ marked across the top of your exam. If you're a salesperson, see yourself actually closing the sale. If you're giving a speech, see the audience clapping for you and telling you what a wonderful job that you've done. Let's say you want a vacation home on Cape Cod or in Malibu. Picture yourself walking through the front door, noticing the color and the texture of the walls, the lawn, the roof, the entry area. Go ahead and walk through the entire home in your mind, filling in the details exactly as you would like them to be in your reality. Give your images as much richness and detail as you possibly can. And don't worry if at first your images are a bit fuzzy. The process improves with practice. Tie in sounds, smells, and touch. In fact, the more senses and the greater the specificity, the more ammunition that you're giving your subconscious mind to believe it and then to act on it. Okay, you get the idea. Now let's review the steps here. First, you get comfortable. Close your eyes and roll them upward, focusing your breathing for 5 breaths. Second, recreate a winning feeling by bringing forth a positive image from your past and reliving it for a minute or 2. 3, envision your future goal as if you've already achieved it, and do a mental rehearsal of that event or objective with as much color and detail as possible. Now there's one last thing that I want you to do at the end of every session that may seem a bit strange at first, but it's very powerful and very important. When you open your eyes, I want you to say the following out loud. I now allow myself to have, and then fill in the blank with whatever it was that you want. And then say, so be it, it is done. This simple statement to yourself affirms the goal that you've just programmed and releases it. Why release it? What you want to do after affirming it is to release it and not dwell on it. Dwelling on something is like telling your subconscious mind that you don't really believe that it's possible. It's like wanting something too badly. You know when you want something too much and that you're afraid that you're not going to get it? This is what I call the choke syndrome. When you try too hard, you choke on it. And it's a very easy thing to do. People who wish for something fall prey to this all the time. However, if you visioneer it, you've already created it. Now release it and let it go. By letting go of it, you're actually programming into your subconscious the belief that you expect it to happen. And dwelling on it only creates mental doubt that you believe it's really possible. And there's something else too. You must believe that you deserve it and not feel the least bit guilty about it. For many of us, we have an unconscious guilt about being happy. And you need to remove those feelings from your subconscious once and for all. Why would we feel guilty about being happy? Well, it's because somewhere along the line, our parents, our schools, our churches, or our friends have programmed into us that we have to suffer to be happy, or pay a price for happiness, or that just when things are starting to get good, they all turn bad. Well, that's all a lot of hogwash. People say those things because they themselves have a belief system of limitation and lack. They believe at a core level that they don't deserve success and happiness, so why should anyone else? Most people think that happiness comes out of being successful or having good health, when in fact the reverse is true. Happiness is not something that's earned or deserved. Happiness is simply a state of mind by which our thinking is positive a good share of the time. If you wait until you feel deserving of having pleasant thoughts about your life, you'll end up convincing your subconscious that you're undeserving of happiness. And the result is you'll be unhappy and unsuccessful in most of your undertakings. It's not selfish or wrong to be happy, regardless of where you are in life. So be happy. Happiness is a means to an end, success and well-being. And it's also an end in and of itself that we all desire. Happiness is not something that happens to you. It's something that you cultivate, that you determine and control. If you're waiting for happiness to happen to you, you're going to have a long wait. Instead, leapfrog to it right now. How do you do that? Well, it's really very simple. By being and acting happy, even when you're not. It's what all winners do, and it's what you should do, and do it now. Here are the 3 components that will allow you to create the mental habit of being happy the majority of the time and winning in every circumstance that you encounter. The first aspect of this is to not allow any outward experiences to influence you about how you think about yourself. You do this by changing the way that you react to circumstances. Instead of being a participant in the circumstance, be apart from it. Let's say you're a salesperson, and you make sales and you create commissions for a living. And you've just spent the last 3 months of your time and money putting together a major deal. And it's just getting ready to close when your prospect backs out at the last minute. Your commission was big bucks, and you see it all going down the drain before your very eyes. And you say to yourself, I just knew this was a lousy business. Why did I ever go into this business in the first place? People are rotten. Now I have to start all over again. Whoa, wait a minute, time out. Stand outside of this picture for a moment. The circumstances are that the deal fell through. But how you react to it will have everything to do with your happiness and the success of future deals. Instead of moaning and feeling helpless, make a conscious habit of reacting aggressively and positively towards threats and problems. Don't let it affect you personally. It's just another deal in a world that's full of deals. Move on to the next one. When you can mentally control the circumstances and never see failures as failures, you'll be amazed at how much easier life will become. Every human being that's alive is presented with challenges and obstacles. It's only how we perceive them that makes them negative or positive. The second component of this concept is to consciously practice living your life in the present, not the past nor the future. You can envision the future the way that you want it to be in your visioneering sessions, but don't make the mistake of living in it. The secret of being alive and always happy is to experience the present. Think back for a moment of the happiest times in your life. I'll bet those were moments that you were totally absorbed and focused in the present. And you were happiest because you felt so alive, so in touch with the experience of living. You weren't thinking about the past or the future because you were too busy living in the now. This is one of the secrets of truly happy people. They're absolutely absorbed in the feeling of being alive. Let me give you an example that almost anyone can relate to. Making love is perhaps one of the most physically and psychologically satisfying things you can do. Why? Because your energy is so focused and so concentrated in the moment, that feeling of being alive is incredibly intense. And you want to know something interesting? Many Vietnam vets will admit that the time when they felt most alive was when they were in country, walking out in some rice paddy. As strange as it may seem for these soldiers, that was the time that they felt most alive. By living your daily life with focus and concentration, you will not only perform at your best, but the intense pleasures you will derive from just living will dramatically increase. And there's a simple way to go about doing this that I learned from the famous author Ray Bradbury. To help him focus his daily writing, he had a sign that he put on his desk that said, "Don't think, don't try, just do." And that's really what it's all about. Thinking and trying give your subconscious the wrong message. Just by doing, your subconscious autopilot will automatically steer you in the right direction. The third and final point I want to make here is for you to make happiness a habit. Link it in with your self-image. Regardless of your fears, anxieties, and circumstances, make happiness the choice that you pick. See yourself as happy. Focus on the details of the moment and take the time to love and appreciate the magnificence of the world around you. By affirming life and moving forward through life's experiences with an attitude that says yes to all the circumstances that you encounter, you'll program your subconscious to deliver a meaningful and joyful existence. It's true. And it's not that difficult if you don't think or try, but just do. You know, science is just now catching on to the immense powers of the mind. Powers to spontaneously heal disease. Powers to overcome extreme handicaps, both physical and psychological. And powers to live a life filled with joy and happiness. You know, we spend hours in a gym conditioning our bodies to look and feel their best, but very little time developing our most valuable resource, our minds. And the more you condition your mind for success, the more you will have. Computer programmers have a term they use called garbage in and garbage out. A badly programmed computer is doomed to spit out bad information. And that's the same with your mind. Make a point of using this program on a regular and consistent basis, and do the visioneering exercises on the little things as well as the big things that you want. You'll be amazed at how effortless it will make your life. And finally, why not just for the heck of it, create a habit of being happy all the time? Make a conscious decision to take aggressive action in the circumstances of your life and resolve to become the best that you can be. These simple things will have a dramatic effect on your reality. Follow this program, and 1 year from now, I guarantee you'll be totally amazed at the transformation and the positive direction that your life takes. Thank you for listening, and until next time, this is Dane Spots.
Hello, this is Wayne Dyer, and I'm here to talk to you about something that I think of as one of the most important things you can learn in your life: how to pull your own strings. Pulling Your Own Strings was a book that I wrote back in 1978. I think I appeared on about 3,000 talk shows across the country talking about it over the years. It was a bestseller for many, many years, and still to this day continues to be something that people who want to be more assertive and who do not want to have their strings pulled by others refer to on a regular basis. I'm very proud of this book, and talking about this again after all these many years is an interesting, exciting kind of voyage for me, because it's always good to remind yourself that you don't want to be a victim, you don't need to be a victim, that you have a right to your own freedom in life, and that you have the absolute right to choose to live the kind of life that you want to. Unfortunately, and this is the whole basis of this tape, most people do not make that kind of choice. Most people in our culture allow themselves in one way or another to be victimized by people and institutions and family and organizations and jobs and even strangers and clerks and bureaucrats. And they say things to themselves almost from a resigned point of view. It's just the way it is. We live in a society that victimizes each other. We have to play the game. There's nothing we can do about it. It's just something that happens, and it happens to all of us. And I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to happen to you. It doesn't have to happen at all in any areas of your life. That there are specific strategies and ways of processing your world and your life that will allow you to get out of the victim habit. And being a victim is truly a habit. It is something that you have grown up with, that most of us have grown up with. Most of us grow up with a set of beliefs that we have to fit in. I remember my favorite poem of E.E. Cummings was one little line where he said, to be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best night and day to make you just like everybody else means to fight the greatest battle there is to fight and never stop fighting. And that's basically what this is. It's an effort to help you to declare your independence. In the Declaration of Independence itself, Thomas Jefferson put it this way: all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. And what this is about, pulling your own strings, is helping you to abolish the forms to which you have become accustomed. There are many ways to be a victim. Some people just operate from weakness all their lives. Some people are victimized by the past or institutions or family. And I'm here to tell you in this tape that pulling your own strings is really an attitude shift. A shift away from having to be just like everybody else, having to fit in, having to do what you're told, having to listen to other people as the determiners of what your life is going to be, being intimidated by others, being bullied by others, being fearful of what might happen to you if you were to live your life the way you want to. I'm saying to you that you do not have to live that way. That being a victim is a learned habit. It is not your natural way of being. It is just something that you have accepted. And as long as there are people or institutions or organizations that will suffer those evils upon you, and as long as you're willing to accept them and take that kind of abuse, whether it's mental or physical or emotional or any other way that it can be expressed for you, as long as you're willing to accept it and take it and to fit into that role, there will be those out there who will indeed be willing to continue their role of putting you in your place. So being able to pull your strings means changing around some expectations that you have for yourself. And that's the very beginning. That's the hardest part for most people, because most people are victims not because the world is such a bad place and because there's so many bad guys out there. It's because people have accepted that role and have a set of expectations about where they fit in this world. And very often they believe that they fit in underneath someone else's thumb or being dictated to by someone else, or keeping quiet when inside you're bursting to express yourself. That may be a role that you have learned and adopted. And there are other kinds of victim traps as well. You may be a very assertive, aggressive, outgoing person and still be victimized by a lot of the beliefs that you have, your emphasis on making the place where you work perhaps more important than your own life. You may have placed loyalty to the institution of your choosing above the loyalty to yourself as a human being. You may be making things more important than people. You may be victimizing yourself physiologically by abusing your body with addictive substances or with the wrong kinds of foods or not the proper exercise. You may be victimizing yourself through type A behavior where you're always in a hurry and always facing deadlines and never able to enjoy your life. There's an old saying that I've always loved that said that nobody on their deathbed ever wishes that they had spent more time at the office. You know, like, oh, if I'd only spent 15 hours a day instead of 14, I could die happily. Or if I'd only, made a little bit more money. That isn't what it's about. That people wish always, as they get to the end of their life, that they'd spent more time with the people they love, that they had rearranged the priorities of their life so that they could live the kind of life that they want to. And I'm here to say that you can. What are the non-victim expectations? What kinds of expectations do victims have? Well, let me look at just a few of the major categories of these and the most important ones. The first is in your physical capacities and capabilities. What kind of expectations do you have about yourself physically? The kind of human being that you are, the kind of body that you have and that you've shown up in. Do you believe that it's limited? Do you believe that it has to be sickly? Do you believe that you don't have the capacity to heal it, to make it well? Do you believe that other people are stronger and can do things that you can't do? The notion of your physical body and what you expect of it is something that you can really drastically change around. It was only in my life when I really knew that I could get myself to maximum health, super health, if you will. And I did that many, many years ago. Changed around the expectations that I had to live out a life of a flabby lifestyle. And since October the 7th of 1976, I have run a minimum of 8 miles every day, and I've never missed a day. And that is a lot of years and a lot of days into the 1990s without missing a day. And it's only because I have an expectation that that's something that I can do. It's not a compulsive behavior. It is just a way of being. It's no more compulsive than brushing my teeth every day, something that I do as a way of life. And I changed around a whole lot of expectations about my own body and how healthy it can be. I've changed around expectations about what I have to put into my body. And therefore things like alcohol and drugs and even caffeine and salt and all of the kinds of things that we put into our body indiscriminately and poison ourselves with are no longer choices that I made. Not because I've got such great discipline and I'm some kind of a super being. Not at all. It's because I've changed my expectations around of what my body can do. And once you get yourself aligned in a higher consciousness way about who you are and what you can do, your body just takes over. That is, your body fulfills its own perfect destiny. It is a temple. It is a temple that houses your soul and houses your mind. And keeping that body in maximum shape is something that any of us can do. But you've got to change around your expectations and not be a victim of it. There's also the whole notion of your mental capacities. So many people believe that they're just average, that they're only capable of doing mediocre kinds of things, that they're C students, if you will, that they fit in the middle somewhere. I believe there's a genius residing in you, and that genius is waiting to awaken. And the awakening process is really, once again, changing around your expectations, shifting your consciousness from a belief that you are average, or that you're mediocre, or that you can only accomplish a certain number of things, to shifting it to I am a creative genius. I am here on this planet for a reason. The whole universe is part of a perfection, a perfect system. There's an intelligence to the whole system. I believe the entire universe is part of a perfect intelligence that is making the whole thing work, invisible though it may be. And you are part of that. And there's no accident there. And you're here for a reason. And when you get your life onto purpose, you will find that your mental capacities begin to grow enormously. When you believe and expect that you are capable of handling anything in a mental capacity, when you know that in your heart and in your soul, then you no longer continue to think like a victim. Your emotional capacities. This is something that people victimize themselves with over and over and over again every single day. Again, notice the emphasis. People victimize themselves with. Other people will only victimize you if you allow them to. And I'll speak more about that later. But your emotional capacities, I believe that you choose your own feelings. Your feelings come from your thoughts. And if you can learn how to control your thoughts and understand that your thinking is what creates emotions in you, then you can choose the emotions you have. You don't have to be upset. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be anxious. You don't have to be fearful in given situations. It may be the way that you normally would react, and maybe you'll continue to react that way. But it's still a choice. Your emotional reactions are choices. And when you know that, then you'll be able to catch yourself when you find yourself immobilized or out of control or being pushed around or victimized by your own emotional reactions. Who are the victimizers? Who are the people out there that are manipulating and controlling us? Well, I have a few categories here. The number one on this category is the family. As much as my family is important to me, I don't think there's anything more important in my life. I don't have to say I don't think. I know there's nothing more important in my life than my wife and my children. And they're all very, very important to me. I have 7 of them. Each one of them is precious and dear and has their own purpose and is on their own path. And I try to keep that family life something that isn't going to later be the source of their being victimized emotionally. If you look at virtually everybody in mental institutions across the country and take a survey or a poll on what it is that they couldn't deal with and why they ended up mentally unbalanced or incapacitated in some way, you'll find that about 99% of it is from families. Families. People telling each other how they have to be, what they have to think, how they have to dress, what their values ought to be, what their religious and spiritual orientation ought to be, what kinds of cars they ought to drive, what kinds of food they ought to eat, who they ought to talk to, who they have to hate, who they have to stay away from, who they have to be victimized by, if you will. Families. And you have to be very, very careful as a member of a family and understand that while it is the most important institution in our culture, it is also the one that does the most damage. And you have to know that in order to be your own person and not be having your strings pulled by somebody else, you're going to have to stand up to family members, whether they're immediate family or extended family. The ability and the willingness to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to be what you think I ought to be. I have to stand up for it and be the kind of person I am. That's what pulling your own strings is about. Not allowing anyone, family or otherwise, to be your victimizer. The other big victimizer is the job. A lot of people don't like their job. A lot of people feel that they're not pursuing their bliss. They're not following their own purpose and why they're here. And they find themselves being pushed around and even going to work every single day and going home and being full of remorse. And then that remorse continues to grow and so on. If you feel victimized by your job, then you have to take some time to ask yourself why you're allowing yourself to stay and do things that don't make sense to you or don't fit in with what your own view of why you're here is all about. Another big victimizer is professionals and authority figures. People are intimidated. So many people are intimidated by that whole teacher complex or that whole doctor complex. They go into a dentist's office and they're the ones who's paying the bill and they're the ones who's making this whole thing happen. That beautiful office you see there is because it's costing you a fortune to have a crown put on your tooth, and you're calling him doctor and he's calling you by your first name. When it seems to me it ought to be the other way around. And being intimidated by authority figures, whether it's medical people, and sure, it's nice to show respect to other people, and I'm not saying you ought to be disrespectful, but I'm saying you ought not to ever place anybody else's head above your own. And people do this with authority figures all the time, police and military and people who have money and all of these kinds of people in positions of authority can be a big category of victimizers. Bureaucracies are an enormous victimizer in our culture, particularly in Western culture, where we have to keep records for everything that we do. Just make an appointment with the Social Security Administration sometime, or go to have your driver's license renewed, or go down to the post office, or go to an IRS office and sit down and try to get some information, and you find yourself being shifted around and here and there and everywhere. And this kind of bureaucracy is something that a lot of people feel victimized by. And I think it's unnecessary. I don't think we have to experience it and feel it that way. There are ways to deal with those institutions and keep yourself sane, and I'll be talking about some of those. And finally, the biggest victimizer of all, of course, is yourself. Yep, yourself. Despite all the people in the other categories, the fact is that you are the one who victimizes yourself. You are the one who makes these things more important than yourself. And you are the victim very often of your own training and your own history and your own values and your own behavior towards your body and your own behavior towards your mind, your own self-portraits that you have inculcated over a lifetime. So when you look at all the victimizers out there, and you look at all the people who are pushing you around, perhaps, or you feel are responsible for a lot of your obsequious behavior, then always keep in mind that you are the product of the choices that you make as you go through your life, and that instead of saying, "Why is this happening to me?" and "Isn't this awful?" and "Why, God, are you putting me through this again?" begin to ask yourself the question, what's in it for me? What's the lesson? What do I have to gain here? And how can I transcend this and get past it? When you do that, you'll begin to move on to the next level, which I call operating from strength. In moving forward towards pulling your own strings in all areas of your life, you want to develop an attitude, a self-portrait, in which you begin to visualize and image yourself as a tower of strength, not weakness. Keep in mind that people respect strength, not weakness. I can remember in teaching for many, many years at the university level and the high school level and even at the elementary level for a while, but particularly at the university level, in the graduate school, I would give an evaluation at the end of the course each year, each semester. And I would get in a whole lot of, most of the people who would fill out these forms would write something, and they'd all say something really nice. "He was terrific, you were great, it was a great course, best class I ever had." And I would just sort of flip through those, very neatly, until I'd get to the ones that were critical, or the ones that were, I felt, helpful and honest, not nasty and not abusive in any way, but people who weren't afraid to say what it is that they really felt. And those are the ones I paid the most attention to. It's interesting. When you are looking for an honest opinion, when you really want help, you're going to go to a person who is not afraid to tell you the truth. And while you know who the people are that you can go to when you want to be stroked, or when you want to be made to feel better, when you need help, and you need an honest, straightforward, truthful answer, you'll respect strength, not weakness. Weakness is saying the thing that makes somebody else feel good. Strength is operating from integrity, from authenticity, from honesty. And people respect that. I know in my own life when I really want to know what it is that I can do to improve something, I know that my wife isn't afraid to tell me that. There's a lot of people who are. There are people who work for me who don't want to tell me that, who are going to tell me the things that are going to make me feel good and make them look good and so on. But I know that my wife, Marcy, will not be afraid to tell me, this is what you have to do, or this is what's missing, or this. And sometimes I don't even like it. And sometimes I rail against it. But I always go to her when I want when I want help or when I want assistance, because I know that she's not afraid to tell me the truth. So people respect strength. People don't respect weakness. And that's something that you have to learn if you're going to be pulling your own strings in your own life. That operating from strength really means operating from effectiveness in your life. It's almost like you have to develop a code of non-victim ethics for yourself that says, I am a valuable, important, significant, divine creation. I am here for a very short time. While I'm here in form, in the physical body that I'm in, I am entitled to fulfill the purpose or the destiny that I have been assigned while I'm here. I believe in that I'm here for a purpose. And I'm going to get my life on that purpose. And anyone or anything that gets in the way of that, as long as I can behave towards them in a moral and just and honest way, I can say to myself in my moral code of ethics, you do not have a right to interfere. No one has a right to interfere with anyone else's right to live their life the way they want to. No one. My right to swing my fist and flail my arms about stops with your right to not have your nose be punched. All right? So as long as you're not hurting anybody else in the process of operating from strength, as long as you're not interfering with somebody else's right to do the same, then whatever it is that you're doing is perfectly all right. Now, there are going to be a lot of people who aren't going to like that. And I've outlined a few of those people already. The family particularly are going to be a lot of people in there who are going to tell you that you shouldn't do it this way because it's inconvenient for them, or that isn't going to get them to, they're not going to have anybody to manipulate and to control. And if you go off and just do whatever it is you want to, they might have to do a lot more than they've been used to doing. They might have to clean up after themselves. They might have to take responsibility for their own life. And you've been doing that all along. So they will be spending a lot of energy in attempting to keep you from really asserting yourself and going out and doing what is significant and important for you in your own mind. But you have to be effective. You have to be what I think of as quietly effective. And the way that you are quietly effective is you do not teach people not to victimize you with words. Let me emphasize that. Words are not the tools of the quietly effective person operating from strength. It is behavior that counts. You teach people with your behavior how you want to be treated. And here we are, trying to pull our own strings and be our own person, and talking endlessly and ceaselessly and having these arguments and discussions, and it still goes on and it still goes on, and you still find yourself the victim, and you still find yourself picking up after others or not being respected or whatever it may be. There's an old saying, it's one of the secrets of the universe. I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. And not one moment before. Doing is what teaches people how to understand you. So it is in the process of doing, when someone behaves towards you in a way that is to victimize you, like your children, for example, leaving their clothes around, and you endlessly talk to them about not doing this any longer, and you don't want them to leave your clothes around. Don't you understand that I have to pick up your clothes and my clothes, and that's not fair? And you go through this tirade day in and day out, and it still continues. But when you take those clothes and put them in the trash, or when you leave those clothes sit there and don't wash them, so that the only clothes that get washed are those that are in the appropriate place, or when you teach them with whatever it is that is effective, quietly effective behavior with no words, you let them know specifically going to be your victim. And this is true of virtually every screaming at you, and whether it's your husband or your wife or one of your children or a clerk or whatever, and if you stand there and scream back, it's just words against words, and it doesn't mean anything. But if you leave quietly, leave the room and go into another room, you're sending a signal. I am too dignified and too valuable a person. I think too much of myself and take that kind of abuse. So I will be leaving. And you don't have to say those words, you just do it. And in every single expression wherein you are victimized through conversation or through words, there is a way to teach people with your behavior that you are a person who operates from strength rather than weakness. You must learn to never place anyone in your life in importance above yourself. No one. The President of the United States, the generals that are in the armed forces, the very rich people, fancy homes in the suburbs, the entertainers, the sports stars, all of these, the movie stars, whoever these people are, they are no different than you. That's one of the great lessons I learned when I toured the country many years ago for this book and for Your Erroneous Zones, and met appearing on The Tonight Show many times, and on Dinah Shore Show and John Davidson, all of these shows that were very, very popular at that time. And I met so many of the top stars in music and in entertainment and sports and the recording industry, and it was always interesting to me that none of them, these were the people that were your heroes, none of them were any better than I was. I remember what President Carter said when he was running for office, and they asked him if he thought he was qualified to run for president. He said, well, I really never thought I was until I met all the other people who were running, and then I felt I was just as qualified as they were. And that's always the effect that it has on me when I meet somebody who's in this high position of authority, and I meet them and I talk with them and I find out that they have the same difficulties and the same foibles and the same problems and the same pimples and the little blemishes, and they smell bad too when they wake up in the morning, and they're not any better or different than any of the rest of us. And what you want to do is in your own mind, which is where being a non-victim always takes place, of course, is teach yourself that nobody out there deserves any more accolades or any more attention or any more respect than you do. You are human. You are connected to all the rest of us through that invisible intelligence that runs through all form in the universe. And you are just as valuable. And in God's eyes, no one is any better than anyone else. Know that. And know that it's not only true in God's eyes, but it's true in your eyes as well. And keep that in your mind. And then as you operate from strength, you can try on a few of these strategies. You stop asking permission in your life. You stop seeking permission when you're speaking. Instead of saying, would you mind if I ask you a question? Say, I'd like to know if, and whatever the question may be. Instead of saying, would you mind terribly if I return this for a refund? Say, I'm bringing this back because I'm dissatisfied. You can do that respectfully. You can do that kindly and gently. Instead of when you're going out with and saying, is it all right, dear, if I go out for an hour? You say, I'm going out, dear. Is there anything that you'd like me to do for you while I'm out? It's a declaration versus a question of getting permission. Get the permission, the idea that somebody else has to give you permission in order to live your life or do the things that you're entitled to do. This is not at all a case for being disrespectful at all of other people. It's a case for just letting the world know, and the people in it that are important to you, that you have a right to live your life without being victimized. It's as simple as that. Don't take it any further than that. When you're talking to people, if you want to operate from strength, look right into their eyes when you talk to them. When you look down or when you look from side to side, you send out a signal. The signal is, I'm not as important as you are. When you hem and haw and and maybe and all of that, you are sending out a signal. The signal is, victimize me. Do whatever it is that you want to do to me. I'm here just for that purpose. Watch your body and your posture and your body language when you're speaking, and make a direct effort to look directly into someone's eyeballs. I do that all the time when I'm speaking to people. I speak in large audiences, and when I'm through, people will come up to me, and I try to always make direct eye contact with that person. It's the window to the soul, and if you don't do that, you're sending out a signal. If someone asks you for a loan, or someone asks you to do things or something that you don't want to do, like serve on a committee perhaps that you don't want to serve on, instead of beating around the bush and playing the victim game and knowing that eventually by saying maybe and I'm not sure and call me in a week and all of that, you know that eventually they're going to get you. There's such an easy way to handle that. 2 simple letters, N-O. right off the top, no, I'm not interested in that. Thank you for considering me. And then when they come back with all of the reasons why you should be doing what they think you should do and that you don't want to do, your response is, I guess you just didn't hear what I said. Perhaps you didn't hear me when I said that I didn't want to do that. And you never veer from that stance. And it becomes like a wonderful game that you're playing. You know what their game plan is. Their game plan is to get you to do something that you don't want to do, or to loan you some money when you're not good for it, or whatever it may be. You know what their game plan is and what their objective is. And all you have to do is just stay on course. And lo and behold, after a while, they stop. All of that kind of stuff stops because you were emphatic enough at the beginning to just simply say no. If you're a non-smoker and other people are smoking around you or anything like that, and you feel that they're violating your right to have your lungs free from their noxious smoke, then don't be afraid to politely ask someone to do it. Test yourself. Give yourself an opportunity to test your operating from strength behavior. Don't sit there and inhale smoke for an entire evening. In fact, that's one of the reasons why it's become less fashionable for people to smoke and why fewer and fewer people are doing it, which is wonderful. Because it used to be that the smokers were in the majority and the non-smokers were the victims. It doesn't have to be that way any longer. And now you're seeing it reversing. People are beginning to pull their own strings. Try calling some people by their first name. Instead of yes sirring and doctor this and professor that and sir this and all that, just see what happens. You find that when you keep yourself level with other people, if they're calling you by your first name, they're not any better than you because they have a title, and that isn't necessarily a way that you show people respect. You don't show people respect by what you call them. You show people respect by how you interact with them and how you treat them as human beings. And calling your physician by his first name or whatever is, or whomever it may be, if it's a problem. If it's not, then do it any way you want to. But if you're working on not putting and elevating other people in importance to you, then you have to work on it in all kinds of areas. And the thing that you fear the most, you find that those people, that there was nothing there to fear in the first place. I prefer being called Wayne. I don't like it when people call me doctor this or professor. I don't need that. And I, when somebody comes up to me and says, "Hi, Wayne, how you doing?" or whatever, whoever they are, I always feel that that's a person who's operating from strength. I have more respect for that than I do for the need for someone to place the title. Never be afraid to go over someone's head if you feel like you're being victimized, whether it's in a store or in a business or in a bank or whatever it may be. You don't have to do that callously, but simply just don't assume that because someone has told you something that is going to put you in a position of being a victim, that you now therefore have to accept that. There's always another way. There's always another. And as long as you keep an open mind to that and know that there's someone else that you can go to, that there's some other avenue that you can take, you'll find yourself less and less being victimized. And particularly when those people know that you're not afraid to do that. I found that in dealing with people at banks, that I go directly to the person that I know has authority, if I want something. And it's much more effective than dealing with all of the people in the middle who are really paid to keep you from reaching the person who makes that decision in the first place. When you're being interviewed for a job or when you're in a situation that might be troubling for you, that's a good time to practice assertive behaviors. You don't ever say things like, "I'm not sure if I could handle this." Instead, you say, "I'm sure I could handle this. I'm sure I could," because I've found in my own life that there's never been anything that I couldn't handle if I really put my mind to it. You send out that kind of a signal, but it has to come from an integrity, from an honesty, from a belief that you know inside that there is nothing that you have to be afraid of or that you can't handle if you're given the sufficient training. And finally, refuse to pay for poor quality and refuse to tip for it as well. Stand up for that. It isn't just an obligation to just turn over your hard-earned money to someone who is giving you poor service or poor quality. You're entitled, if you pay for something, to have the best. You're entitled to that. And it doesn't mean that you have to treat other people in a supercilious manner in any way. It just means that you're entitled to that. and you don't have to be obnoxious about it, and you don't have to be cheap about it. I have found that when I'm dealing with waiters and waitresses and so on, that I consider myself a very generous tipper. I always have believed that if you're debating between giving $3 and $4, always go with the higher number, because what goes around comes around, and it's just a good way to be, and it's what your purpose is all about. It's about giving and sharing and caring for others. And if the service is poor, I don't just leave nothing or anything like that. I generally tell them, I say, gee, you're really having a tough time here tonight. There's a lot of people, and it must be. And generally, they will explain what's going on. Oh, there's a cook back in the kitchen who didn't show up, or there's, and you walk out not feeling like you were victimized. And so when you ask, instead of just sit there and fume. I was just flying on an airplane just the other day, and I found we were 20 minutes late. And the pilot had made no announcement. And I feel victimized when things like that happen. I feel that I'm the one that he's flying here. That's the reason he's got all of those bars on his uniform and so on, because there's people like me who are willing to plunk down several $100s to go from Chicago to New York. And here we are 20, 25 minutes late, and no announcement has ever been made about that, and we took off on time. And I just feel that the passengers are entitled to know that. So I just sent a note to the stewardess and said, would you ask the captain to please make an announcement on why we're late? And sure enough, in another minute, he made an announcement. He even apologized for not having done it. So rather than sit there like a victim and feel like I don't know what's going on, he said there was some storms up, over Lake Erie or someplace, and they had to veer around, and they were going around. And I was grateful. I don't want them flying through those storms. That's fine. I just want to know. I believe that I'm entitled to that. And rather than be angry and all of those kinds of things, you operate from strength. You quietly, effectively get what it is that you're looking for. And that's really the message here. You don't have to be a victim, ever. And if you are, you look at your own behavior rather than those who are treating you in some way that you don't like. One of the big victim traps that so many people find themselves in is being seduced by what is over. I always tell people what is over, and you can't change it, you can't should have done it, you can't would have done it, you can't could have done it. You've got to stop all that shoulding on yourself, if you will. And what you want to do here is look at how you get to be victimized by things that have already happened. Like, I can remember moving from Michigan to New York when I took a position as a professor at St. John's University in 1971 or 72. And I arrived on Long Island, brand new home. It was on a Wednesday. We had left on Wednesday. We drove there. We got there on a Friday afternoon. I had a new little baby girl. And we got to our home, and there was no electricity. So I called Lilco, the Long Island Lighting Company. And I got on with them, and this was Friday afternoon now, and I said to the girl who answered the phone, I'd like to have my electricity turned on. We've got a little baby, and we need to have warm, and it was in October. And she said, I'm sorry, sir, you should have called on Wednesday. So I put my about 3 or 4 times. I said, excuse me, is this Earth? And she said, of course it's Earth. What are you talking about? This is local. I said, well, on Earth, where I've lived for the last 31 years, you can never should have called on Wednesday. On Friday, you can't do that on our planet. She said, would you go through that one more time? I said, real easy. I said, on Earth, you can never should have called on Wednesday on Friday. You can't do that. It's Friday. I can't should have called on Wednesday. She said, I think you better talk to my supervisor. And it took me like 3 supervisors before I got someone who understood that I didn't want to be told what I should have done or what I could have done or what I would have done. I wanted my electricity turned on, and I kept it very light. And sure enough, someone was sent out that afternoon, and I had my electricity turned on. Now, I can call next Wednesday, but I can't should have called on Wednesday. And you can't should have called or should have done anything. Everything that you did in your life up until this moment is over. It's done. It had to happen in order for you to get to the next level. Accept that. Don't allow yourself to be victimized by things that you can't change, things that are over. Your parents were the parents that they were. Your parents did what they knew how to do, given the conditions of their life. They didn't do it good, they didn't do it bad, they weren't right, they weren't wrong. They just were who they were. And they did what they knew how to do. And if what they knew how to do didn't fit in with what you think they should have been doing, then learn from it, grow from it. Don't be full of anger and hatred for them. That's the biggest victim trap you can get into, being mad at somebody for what they did 25 years ago. And besides, they're a different person today anyway, and probably wouldn't do it that way at all. So what you want to do is look at everything that you find yourself upset about or manipulated by or controlled by, and change all of that. Shift it around. Shift it around to a new kind of consciousness. And that consciousness is, I can't change what's over. So all of the things that you did in your past, shoulds that people are imposing on you are things that you're going to have to watch out for. One of the big victim traps is they're going to tell you what you should have done. If only you would have listened to me. If only you would have done it before. Things the way I say it. And when anybody ever does that, that sends off a signal in me. There's a flag that goes up, and I put that, it's a mental flag, and it goes right up into my head. And that flag, it says, I can't, should have, already did it. That's already over. And if somebody starts telling me over and over what I will even ask them questions like, how can I have listened to you now? How can I do that? Explain how I can do that. And usually that just stops them because they see that there's no way to have listened to them when that time is over. If only you wouldn't have moved to Chicago in 1957. If only you wouldn't have done that, you wouldn't be having all these troubles now. How could you not have moved in 1957 when it's in 1991? How can you do that? It's not possible. So you have to look out for the resort to looking at what is over and try to keep you their victim by constantly putting you back there. Let's take a look at some of these tactics that, quote, victimizers, unquote, keep you from being all that you want to be. Keeping in mind that you are, at this point now, refusing to be seduced by what is over. It's over. You're not going to let anybody refer to it. You're not going to refer to it yourself. You're just simply going to be in the present or in the future. Question, why did you do it that way? Great victimizing stance. Gets you in the position of having to defend yourself. It's all you. What did you learn from what you've done? And how can we repeat these errors in the future? They want to get into the whys. And what they're doing, of course, is looking for blame. And as soon as they can blame you and, assign some kind of fault to what has just transpired, then you, of course, are the nice little victim. Another one, if you had only consulted me first. But it's over. That's what you have to always remind yourself. It's over. Sure, if you would have consulted them, perhaps you would have done it different. But you should have consulted them now when it's already over. You can't consult them on Friday about Wednesday. You can't do that any longer. Next Wednesday? Yes, not last Wednesday. Or, we've always done it this way. Again, a reference to the past. Things have always been done that way, therefore you will continue to do them that way, and if you don't do them that way, then you are going to have to explain yourself. And as soon as I get you in the position of having to explain yourself, you are my victim and I'm in charge. Or, if you said it before, why don't you mean it now? You told me this before. You told me you loved me, and now you're telling me that you don't. The assumption, of course, is that people don't change, and because you say something one way a long time ago, that it still applies today. The now is the working unit of your life. The past is a thought. It's formless, it's dimensionless. You can't have it back in the physical world. The only place you can have it is in your mind. So that any reference to what was done in the past or what you said in the past is just usually an effort to get you to be their willing victim. If you don't go there, if you just know in your mind, see, it's almost like a new perception of reality for you. You begin to perceive reality the way it is, now, in the moment. And all of that stuff back there is only just a learning. It's only to be recalled if it's going to be effective now. If it's designed to get you to feel bad or to be manipulated, you don't go there. You simply don't go down that road.
Okay, welcome to the bonus side. Dun, 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 dun. Well, this is called How to Reach Through Time and Space to Find Your Ideal Dream Lover. Now look, first I have to tell you that I don't believe in magic or any of those other occult things per se. But I have had enough strange experiences to come to the belief that people really are connected with each other all the time in ways that the material model just doesn't really account for. So what we're going to show you is a way to put yourself in a state of mind where you are already connected to everyone anyway, and then reach out and make that special contact with that special person. Now, you might be wondering how quickly this method can work, and I'm here to tell you that I've met the person I visualized the next day in less than 24 hours. I'm not kidding. This is extraordinarily powerful. It really is mind-blowing stuff. I can't promise it will be that way for you the first time out, the first time you try it, but The exercises on the other tapes in this series will help you a lot because they tend to remove any limiting beliefs that would slow down your results. And that's really what's going to determine how quickly and how powerfully you can do that, what your beliefs are. So really, this is the perfect complement and completion to the work that you've already done and to what you've already learned with this tape series. By the way, if you're cheating and skipping to this bonus side before doing the other sides, naughty, naughty, naughty. Go back, do the other stuff first, and this new stuff will work infinitely better. Okay, so here's the method. It's really quite simple. The first step is you want to get yourself in a relaxed state. Preferably you should do this before going to sleep at night, just lying in bed quietly with your eyes closed and the lights off. Unless you're afraid of the dark, in which case you've got other problems. Next, I want you to begin to think of the values you'd like to share with this special person. And by that I mean the qualities to the relationship, like adventure, a sense that you see the world in the same way, mutual enjoyment of each other's personalities, admiration, passion, whatever those qualities of the relationship might be. So remember, these aren't qualities about her. We're not thinking about that yet. So it's not she's got a sense of humor, she's this, she's that. These are the qualities that you'd like the relationship to have. And in fact, it may help you if you want to sit down and take a piece of paper and a pen and write these out and spend some time thinking about that before you actually do the exercise. That's fine too. Then, I want you to think about the qualities she will have to have in order for the relationship to bring you all the things you've just listed. So now you're going to think about the qualities that this woman is going to have. And list them by saying she is, not she will be or has to be, but she is. Remember, this person is already out there waiting to be drawn to you. And make sure you get into great detail. You might want to list the fact that she's physically attractive. You can even think about the way you want her to look. As you get into more detail, you see, it's like dialing a person's phone number. You have to get the specific digits in the right sequence to make the connection, okay? So just think about all those qualities you'd like her to have. And as you're doing that, you may actually begin to visualize her. You may get a pretty clear picture of what she looks like. That's not necessary. You may just get a general outline of what she looks like. Now, the next step is to focus on actually feeling their presence there. As you're thinking about the qualities you want her to have, and as you're maybe starting to see an image of what she looks like, maybe not, again, you don't have to see that image clearly. What you do want to do is get a sense that you can feel their presence, feeling the way you'd feel if they were already in your life. Next, start to focus on that feeling of being connected to this special person. You might feel it first in the area of your solar plexus, or your forehead, or maybe even your groin. Generally speaking, you'll feel the connection first in the area of your solar plexus. Some people refer to it as your heart area. Technically, your heart is over to the left, so I like to call it the solar plexus area. But if you want to think of it as your heart, that's fine too. As you feel that connection, in whichever of these three areas it is, imagine that there is a cord of light going from that area on your body to the area on her body. You'll even feel a click sometimes to let you know that the connection has been made in one of these areas. Usually the heart or solar plexus area is first in almost every case. Then focus on making the connection in all three areas as you feel all three, heart or solar plexus, head, and groin, connecting with her simultaneously. This is going to give you a very strong, powerful sense of connection with her, like she's right there in the room with you almost. Take a minute to really focus on how good that feels, and to also feel a sense of real gratitude for having made the contact. You might even find yourself saying out loud, "Thank you." That's not necessary. You may feel moved to do that. Next, turn up the juice by visualizing a spiral or a coil spinning in your solar plexus area. As you visualize sending out more energy through that area, you'll find that this increases, even sometimes doubles the feeling of being connected with this person. Now, here's the next step. Imagine that you're inside her body, looking out through her eyes at you. Notice as she names the qualities about you she loves the most, and feel the love she has for you. Finally, come back to your body, feel that connection again of heart, or solar plexus as you might want to call it, head, and groin, and then thank her in advance for coming into your life. Now, Don't overdo this process. Once a week will do it. What you'll find is that you get sudden urges to go to places you normally wouldn't, or to go to places that you would normally go to, but at times you normally wouldn't. You may see this as a sudden image flashing into your mind. You may hear a voice saying, "Go here." Follow these urges without hesitation, and you will be shocked at how that woman just happens to be at that place that that picture of that voice led you to. This is really mind-blowing stuff. Now, if the person you meet isn't exactly right, that's not a sign that it's a failure. That's a sign that you have to go back to the drawing board and add in new qualities to the person. For example, the first time I did this, the first day I did this, I met a girl the next day who was just like I visualized. But I forgot to add into my visualizing and the qualities that I named that she would be available for a relationship. It turned out she already had a boyfriend, but she had every other quality that I was looking for. So I had to go back in the drawing board and name that quality of her being available. Depending on your personal power, your beliefs, etc., you should meet the ideal person within 5 tries, especially in light of the fact that the other exercises in this series will have stripped away your limiting beliefs and self-image. Things should manifest quickly for you. Just be sure to build the belief that if she's not exactly right the first time, you just have to add in new qualities. Well, that's it for the bonus side. See you in the real world.